Hello, I'm Mike Urton, and today I'm here with Barry Hannant, who is a bivocational minister with the EFCA All People Initiative. He is also the author of this book, The Hammer and the Pulpit, and we're going to have a conversation about bivocational ministry and his book, The Hammer and the Pulpit. Barry, it's good to have you.
Good to be here.
So can you give us a brief history about yourself and kind of what you've done?
I've been a carpenter and in the trades my entire life. I've also been a missionary in Mexico City for over 10 years, returned to the United States, and immediately realized that there's a need for entrepreneurial bivocational ministry, otherwise known as tent making.
All right, and so you've written this book because of being bivocational. What was the motivation for the book?
Partly due to the new teammates. Alex Mendez challenged me to write something from a blue-collar perspective, and I've read some great books and studied other authors who wrote from a white-collar perspective. And I bring something fresh to the table with literally hands-on ministry writing.
And you know, as you mentioned, talking to Alex, a lot of immigrant churches can't hire a full-time pastor, and so many of them are bivocational, and that's what you advocate for, and you yourself are bivocational. Yes. So can you tell us how you've made that choice to be bivocational yourself?
When we come back from overseas, one thing that happens is you lose supporters. When you start a church, you also have to gain new supporters. Bivocational ministry is a way to be in the marketplace, support yourself, and be shoulder to shoulder with those who might come to your church someday.
In an opinion page of the Baptist News Global, George Bullard states, over 80% of the people who serve in ministry roles do so bivocationally. When the whole spectrum of Christian ministry is considered, it is easily true that the majority of people serving congregations in the role of minister do so bivocationally. He calls this the global norm. So in circles you work, bivocational ministry, is that the norm? Can you explain that?
I would say 75% of the churches, whether it's English or a second other language, definitely so, because launching is hard work. Launching requires community activity, and you can gain both at the same time by performing a service to both God and man.
Well, in December of 2017, Christianity Today ran an article, The New Normal, 9 Realities and Trends in Bivocational Ministry. And this is what they write. And going along with even some of the statistics you're quoting. According to the 2015 Faith Communities Today survey, fewer than 2/3, 62% of U.S. churches have a full-time pastor. That's down from 71% in 2017. The article goes on to say that in the United States, bivocational pastors are increasing at a rapid rate. This is attributed to the decline in attendance of existing churches and new church plants that cannot afford a full-time pastor. So how does your book help the church prepare for this new reality?
My book is a return to holistic ministry. Years ago, the itinerant pastor would ride from one place to the other, and he supported himself through farming, ranching, all kinds of trade work, such as Paul did in tent making. And so what it does is it puts you back into shoulder-to-shoulder ministry with others. And this book actually goes through some super detail, in-the-weed details about how to build a house, about how to paint, and basic things that we can teach the bivocational pastor to do while they're doing ministry.
Well, and you give some examples about how bivocational is a great way to do evangelism and discipleship. Yes. Can you talk about some of those examples?
Love to. There's many examples in the book. My favorite one is the 22 cement finishers I met early in the morning in Castroville, Texas. 10 o'clock, it's time to take a break from pouring all the concrete. We brought in the tacos, and I realized that there was a bunch of Spanish speakers in front of me. And I asked them a question, what church do you go to? Most of them said they belong to the Catholic Church, but they also said they didn't attend that church. They weren't practicing Catholics. And I reminded them that they were here helping a church start a new beginning from the foundation up, and that they would be welcome in this church if they came.
One pastor in Uptown Church, New York, says that a lot of the people who do bivocational ministry, or write about, I shouldn't say do, they write about bivocational ministry, aren't really doing it themselves. And one of the questions he raises is to do bivocational ministry and have two different jobs in two different industries is really difficult. What is your thought on that?
Well, bivocational ministry is not for the faint of heart. It's very difficult. But one of the things I read when I look at Stanley Livingston, for example, is their KRAs were designed around industrial efforts, opening up waterways and doing things structurally, components like drilling wells, and then the ministry followed after that. The other factor that's super important is it's a short-term goal. It's not meant to be a longevity event. It also, though, for those that are good at it, it can morph into a style of ministry that they may call missional from their church from the very beginning.
So this same pastor says some roles of the pastor, they can't be part-time. So when you are talking about bivocational ministry, are you talking about just the role of the pastor? Are you talking about church planters? Are you talking about leaders in the local church? Who are we speaking about?
Well, part-time is something that we all do. We all parcel out our day. We parcel out our week. And so it's not that big of a switch to say, I'm going to spend 35% of my time on the field, literally 35 hours a week. And the rest of the time I'll be writing a message, or I'll also be doing a house church situation. In essence, what happens is their part-time and their departmentalizing becomes a full-time ministry. It becomes something that they become more and more accustomed to doing. And by the way, the rest of the family benefits when the groceries are put on the table, when they may not have had a way to do that before.
And so our audience are primarily pastors, church leaders. If there's one more thing that you would like them to know about bivocational ministry, what would you say that is?
I would say that it's something that Christ mentored and taught himself when he chose the disciples. When Elijah chose Elisha in the field, they were blue-collar examples. Constantly in Scripture we see that that's how the Lord sustains. The Jewish nation became a help to the Persians when they migrated to Nehemiah's wall, because they were building and changing along the way. So it's a way for a church to gain an identity in the community, and it opens the doors to those who aren't coming through the doors.
Well, if you'd like a copy of Barry's book, The Hammer and the Pulpit, we'll link to that in the comments section down below. But Barry, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.